Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Tales of Tamriel. I am your always in need of a dedicated healer host, Aggelos, and with me this evening we have my lovely wife, whose tagline is easier than stealing a sweet roll from a baby, Face. How are you doing this evening, my dear?
I'm doing very well. Very well. I've been enjoying the beta and just, it's been really good. How about you?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, no, it's been definitely been awesome. Spending a lot of time in the beta, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the episode. So I'm not going to spoil it all here in the introductions. We also have a special guest host with us this evening. I've interacted with him many times on Twitter, and he brought to my attention several interesting news bits that he finds as he sifts through the ESO subreddit, including a piece that we will be talking about this evening. I am happy to welcome Crabby to the show. He's also our new writer on TalesOfTamriel.com. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and what got you interested in the Elder Scrolls universe?
Oh, well, hello. Well, let's see. What got me interested in Elder Scrolls? I'm probably one of the few people that really loves Elder Scrolls, but I've never touched Morrowind. I've seen people play it, but I haven't actually played it myself. And I played Oblivion when it came out on Xbox 360. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And I did the main story quest, and that was it. And I liked it then, but I didn't do any side stuff. So then I started playing Skyrim when that came out, and that just made me really fall in love with the universe, like, totally. So, but yeah, that's really what got me into Elder Scrolls the most, was Skyrim, and then I heard about ESO, had some skepticism about it, but now I can't wait for it to come out. So,
excellent, awesome. Well, we are very happy to have you on the show. I must say, I enjoy getting tweets from you almost daily. Sometimes, if I'm missing a tweet from you in a day, it just doesn't feel like a normal day to me. I'm like, oh, this something's not right.
When you work for the state, you get a lot of free time on your hands.
Yeah. I'm a system administrator, so I'm on a computer all day too. So I have like my work stuff on one screen and Twitter on the other. Hopefully my boss doesn't listen to this podcast, or else that Barracuda is going to shut down my web service pretty soon. All right, well, we have a fun show planned for everyone this week. So we have some interesting news we want to get into, and why don't we just get into it? Starting off with game news, as by the time you guys listen to this show, ESO had a beta weekend from the 28th of February up until today, which is the 2nd of March. And yeah, that was pretty awesome. I mean, I hate when I have to put news in here that is past due, but obviously it was a good time. You guys both played beta, I assume?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
What kind of question is that? I played with you.
Well, yes, but the fans don't know that. So.
Are you sure I thought you would be too busy in that special house you found last time you played beta with the people in the basement or something like that. The funny parties.
Oh, me, yes. That was in I think that's in Evanhart, the brothel area. Yes. I was there, and I stopped by. I like to make sure that everything is going on good there. Yeah. I own stock in the company. That's all.
So that's what you were doing for the 30 minutes I couldn't find you. All right, I'll remember that.
That's why I log in early in the morning when she's asleep. That's what I do. I just kind of sit in there. Why I'm always out of gold as well. All right, moving on to the next topic real quick. Tamriel Chronicle issue 47 was out. So I know we were put in that again, as well as they provided a list of a lot of beta streams for this weekend. Crabby, I know you were saying you were watching a bunch of different beta streams. Is there any in particular that were really good that you would like to shout out?
A lot of them have been great. Like the quality of the stream itself has been good. What they've been streaming was good. I mean, there was a lot of PvP streams, which is fantastic. The PvP is great. This one person I watch, twitch.tv/Mendable, is somebody that I watch a lot. He plays a lot of Skyrim, and when ESO comes out, he's going to be playing a lot of that. And I personally like his streams just because it's a tight little community of people that watch him, and it's fun.
Awesome, awesome. I know I was watching. There were a couple of them I was watching. Watched the Force Strategy group. They did theirs, and of course, Elder Scrolls Off the Record. Those guys are insane. As of this recording, I think they're still going.
Yeah,
They were
60-hour stream. I think,
60 hours.
Like
Yeah, yeah. They started at 10 o'clock in the morning on Friday. I remember because I got a tweet from them that they started early, and since I hadn't left work yet, I kind of turned on Twitch and I was watching that for a little bit. So I know they've been going nonstop, just putting people in and out. So that's really cool. I'm trying to think if I saw anyone else that was good. Nothing that's crossing my mind at the moment, but props to those guys in particular, especially for that. That's a marathon run, 72 hours of streaming for the entire weekend. So awesome work. Next online, they released a new article on the Elder Scrolls Online official page called Creating ESO the Music. My biggest thing is, if you guys read I love these Creating ESO articles because they kind of break down to the common masses, if you will, the mere peons and peasants out here that adore the Elder Scrolls, of what their creative process is. And this particular one focused on the creation of the music for the series. And I know for myself personally, I have every soundtrack from all the games except for Arena and Daggerfall. I can't take the MIDI music, but they showed a little bit of the creative process of what they're doing in there and how they're creating the different feels for the games. Because when you guys are playing, do you guys play with the music on?
Yeah, I have to. At minimum, my first character to max level is going to have music on. But for a game like ESO, it's probably going to be on all the time after that. Anyway,
I usually don't. I play with music for the first couple levels until I get used to it, and then I typically play in silence. I do. I play a lot of my games in silence, which most people would probably find kind of strange.
All right, I'm gonna have to stop you right there because we're gonna have to do an intervention. Crabby and we got to do an intervention for you. With ESO, not only the music, but the whole thing is voice acted, and you're gonna do it in silence?
Probably, yeah. See, because I read faster than they speak, and that annoys me because I'm already done reading and they're still speaking, and it just kind of irks me on the inside. So for the first couple levels, I'll probably play with the music and enjoy it because I'm all about the entire feel of it. But then after that, I'll probably play in silence.
do you not play with combat sounds either, or just no music?
Complete silence, no game sounds whatsoever.
That is wacky.
I'm okay. Like 3 episodes back, we talked about the amazing voice casts they had, and you don't want to listen to them?
You don't want to hear and think about Kate Beckinsale? I mean, really?
Well, for maybe special moments like that, I'll turn my sound on for about an hour, and then I'll go back to silence.
What about the lock picking? The lock picking with the tumblers, there's that audible click when you know you have to let go of the mouse.
You watched me do multiple chests this weekend, and I was able to open every single one up to an intermediate without any sound whatsoever.
Okay, I guess this is a losing battle. We're gonna have to just forfeit on this one. Okay.
I'm strange. I can't help it. I'd rather hear the voices in my head as I'm traveling around than hear the music playing around me and as I'm slashing someone's face in.
But it's just... She hears voices in her head while she's killing people. You got nothing to worry about when you're sleeping that night.
Yeah, I know, right? If this may be the very last show of Tales of Tamriel, because I may end up dead. That is just like... I can't comprehend that because the music in the Elder Scrolls universe is just amazing. Like, the thing with ESO is I know they're not using Jeremy Soule for all of it. I think they're using him for most of it, and the rest of it's regular orchestra. I forget who the names were they spouted in the article. But they took a lot of his pieces, and a lot of the pieces in ESO appeared in the later games. They're just kind of reworked and retweaked a little bit to give them a unique feel for ESO, but be a little different than the originals. And actually, something that's really neat is if you ever go back and play the original games, I'm talking Arena and Daggerfall, and you sit there and listen to the MIDI music, you can hear a lot of the music that you hear like in taverns and stuff. It was actually taken from those 8-bit MIDI tracks and converted to full orchestra for the later games. It's the same song throughout the entire series. So it's just the music is such a big part of ESO, and the feeling like when you're walking in Skyrim for that first time, when you get out of that gate, you hear the music playing. Like, there's no game that I know that has a more universally recognized track than the Elder Scrolls theme. When I hear that Elder Scrolls theme, I am, you turn Skyrim on, you hear that song, that first opening song, Dovahkiin, which is, they have that same musical tone and notes. It changes from game to game, but it's that same trumpet blaring kind of sound in every game. It's insanely recognizable to me. So I couldn't do it without it.
I guess for me, I always play in first-person view because I become that person. So if I'm walking around the world, there's obviously not going to be music playing as I'm picking herbs or, beating up wolves.
You just said you listened to the voices in your head anyway, so why can't they learn to play instruments?
That's actually a really good point. Maybe I need to put the voices in my head through music school, and then maybe it'll seem more realistic for me.
Nice. Well, one of the big parts of this article, which I really love, and I think we shouted out in the episode 3 or 4, I'm trying to remember, but Maluka is actually redoing a bunch of the Bard songs in Elder Scrolls Online. She was tasked with picking, I think it was 10 different songs that she wanted to, and she got to write music for them, and her voice appears throughout ESO. Crabby, did you see this?
I didn't see it in game, but I've seen videos of, her character is actually a bard in the game. And, all the bards are singing songs that she wrote and stuff. It's really cool, actually.
I'm going to call it right now. When anyone finds her character in a tavern, that's going to be the most populated tavern in Tamriel. Just calling it.
Oh, yeah,
right
I'll just hang out in there and listen to her sing all day.
That's where I'm logging out every time. I'm going there, logging out. That's where it's going to have to be. All right. Well, anyone else have anything to say about the music before we move on?
Before I get beat up, I might have to start playing my games not in silence. So I'll start considering that now.
Good, because I was contemplating gathering all the necessary materials for a Dark Brotherhood ritual. All right, Crabby, anything from you on the creating ESO music?
I can't wait to hear more. I can't wait to hear more of it. Excuse me, in the later levels, actually.
Oh yes, yeah. I can't talk enough about the music because each zone, they do such a good job bringing life to the zones with the music. It seems to fit the zones, so I'm excited, and I can definitely say if they release a soundtrack, I'm buying it. Just
Oh yeah.
Bethesda, ZeniMax, take my money. All right, moving on to the next part. And we're going to actually go right into our Elder Scrolls discussion with this. But thanks to Crabby, who sent me this actually from Reddit, there was patch notes and some other things released about the current public test server for ESO and some of the changes that were on that server. and Force Strategy Gaming got permission to do a video about them and kind of show us what was going on. And the changes, the big changes, are the inclusion of collision detection and the removal of mandatory starting islands. All right, right off the bat, guys, we're going to go Crabby first, and we're going to go Thais. First impressions when you heard this.
My first impressions, collision detection, fantastic. I think that's awesome. That'll really make it feel more immersive, that you can't just walk through enemy NPCs. I think it's great. Mandatory starter islands, that you can skip them. I was more curious on how it would work. Personally, I like the starter islands, and no company is just going to throw out all that work they put on the initial zones. So I knew they would still be there. So I'm happy they gave you the choice with the starter islands, but I don't know how much we're going to talk about this later, but I do wish they changed how it worked a little bit.
I was actually very upset that they gave you the option to skip the starter islands, especially when hearing that people call them a second tutorial zone, because that is certainly not how it felt. With what Crabby just said, they put so much work and effort into creating these starting islands that it almost feels necessary to go through them, to interact with the first people of these islands, to do these quests, to learn more of how to play. Because you get the general idea when you're in the actual tutorial in Cold Harbor, but then these starting islands, they're not tiny, and there's so much to do and so much to explore. It doesn't really feel like a starting island. I was very upset when they made that an option. You should have to be required to do that island to progress even further.
Well, I'm going to read the 2 bullet points here that we got, and we'll talk about these starter island bits for a little bit. It goes, the first 2 bullet points I have marked down here were, there were improvements to the post-tutorial experience. After you break out of Cold Harbor, you will be dumped into the first starting city of your alliance, which will either be Vocal Guard, Daggerfall, or Davin's Reach. Now, you have the choice to start exploring, or if you desire, there's a boat that'll take you back to the starting island so you can finish them off at your leisure. The area surrounding that first city has had their levels adjusted to suit levels 3 to 6, so you can start right out from those cities. When you first, for the people who have not played beta, as up till even now, the natural progression was after you got out of Cold Harbor, you landed on a small island in one of the 3 alliances, which was your level. Of course, I don't know about you guys. I was only level 2 when I got out of Cold Harbor. Thais, what was your level when you got out?
Probably 1 or 2. Yeah, I don't think I fought many things. I was more about collecting things in Cold Harbor.
And Crabby, do you know what level you were?
I feel like I might have been 2, closer to 3, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. I know you get 1 level automatically after you defeat the monster at the end before you talk to the prophet. That's just like, hey, you leveled. Good job. That was your default level given to you. But when you first start on these islands were that 3 to 6 experience, and then you went on to 1 zone in between for the Ebonheart pack. It was Bolba Modan, and what is the island in Daggerfall Covenant? We were just there.
Stros Mackay?
It's the one after that.
Oh.
Stros Mackay was the starter island for Daggerfall, but there was another, the Orc Island you go to afterwards. I can't remember what it was now. Benaki or something weird like that.
Yeah, it would be with a B, I think, but I can't remember.
Right. Anyway, that's not important. And that was the 6 to 8-ish region. So by the time you got to Devin's Watch or Daggerfall or whatever the Dirty Elf Zone spot was, you were already roughly around level 7 or 8. Now they've adjusted that. So my big question is, and I want to know what you guys feel about this, with the changes to that zone being level 3 to 6. I didn't level much in Cold Harbor, so those things will still be a little higher than me by the time I get out of that zone. But how do you think that the starting zones will be adjusted? The starter islands, Bleak Rock and Canarthy's Roost, those areas.
I don't think they'll have to adjust them all that much because if you're going back to them, when you land on the not starter island, when you land on the main island and you're going back, there would really be no reason to adjust them because who's really going to go to that island after they've already progressed? It just doesn't really make any sense. So I don't see a reason that they would have to adjust the starter island, but in adjusting everything around the major city, I don't see how that didn't kind of break something.
I'm actually gonna pull in another part of the notes here that will kind of fit in with this. One of the notes was they tuned the leveling experience where you level faster at early levels, but then it slows as you move higher in levels. I like this because it's a lot like Skyrim, because the first couple levels went quickly, but then the later levels took longer. With this being known, okay, do you think if they don't do any kind of adjustment, if that area will be bypassed? Crabby, what do you think?
I think the weird disjointing part right now is they're only changing the levels of monsters around the starting cities. So when you get off the starter islands and you're plopped into the city, you're going to be around, 8, 7, and then you're going to start fighting stuff that's level 3 to 8 or 7. So I think that's going to be the weird part. But see, it's strange. I think people who decide to do the starter islands might just have to deal with having to kill underleveled stuff for like an hour or so. I think that'll be the weird part.
Yeah, I mean, for the people who don't care about the story and stuff, you can really clear that starting island very quickly. And I know people are not going to just ignore it because there's a free skill point there. Those
Oh yeah,
three.
there's the sky shards. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're a completionist like myself, I love achievement points. And when uh, World of Warcraft stole the Warhammer achievement system to add in there, I adored it. It added a lot more to my gameplay because I would go back to zones just to get achievements because it's a goal. I'm very goal oriented. I like that kind of thing. Some people are not quite like that, and I think that unless they do some sort of change to make this island attractive in some way, people might just bypass it. Anyone else feel that way, or do you guys just, whatever with the zone?
I think the way it works from what we know is you get out of Cold Harbor, you're plopped into the city, and then you have the choice to go to starter islands or work around in the city area. Personally, I think they should start you off on the starter island and then have the choice to go to the city. Because the starter island, I mean, it has unless they make the quest make sense when you get to the main city, it's going to feel really weird because there's a lot of background on why you're fighting for your particular faction on the starter islands. So it might feel a little disjointed story-wise, but I don't know. I wish they would make it so you start off on the starter island, then have a chance to go to the major city, because then people might just do the starter islands anyway.
I completely agree with that. I think that is a much better idea. Because then you don't have to go back. You can either just, go forward because you're already there or take the ship to the major island. That is a much better idea.
You know, you brought up a really good point I didn't even think about, but it really is the story. When you escape from Cold Harbor, you were literally dropped out of the sky. And the reason why you land on these starter islands is you were normally picked up by a fisher or you like washed ashore. It was kind of like an Inception washing up on the beach kind of feeling. And like I've seen the videos where they, after they get out of Cold Harbor, they just appear in an inn in one of the cities, and it just, how are they going to tie that together? Because the starter islands really do. They kind of, they introduce you to the war at hand, this is the story at hand. You wash up online, and people are kind of frantic, and you have to help them out, and you find out, oh, we're at war. There's enemy soldiers coming across, and you learn about the Alliance conflict. You learn a little bit. I think they could have fleshed it out a little bit more. Don't get me wrong, because at least from the Ebonheart Pact side, from the little bit of quests that I saw, because I wasn't trying to read them, but unfortunately, you glean a little bit from doing it. It didn't really give you a reason other than the fact they were attacking. Like, you didn't really know about a lot of what's going on in the Imperial City. You didn't really know anything about that, because you know about Molik Bal, but you don't know anything else. Like, you're like, well, I was just kind of a soulless slave here for a little bit, and now here I am. But it feels disjointed just thinking about the quest around Devon's Watch. Why would you go back? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Now, God knows the internet is never wrong, am I right? But there was a rumor I saw on Reddit from one of the TES testers. Allegedly, they're changing some quests around in the major city to make it make sense, and it's not voice acted yet. That's what I heard. Do not know if that's true or not, but I guess that's something, to maybe make it make a little more sense, but, who knows?
Right. If they do that, I don't feel as bad, because, to be honest, I wasn't either here nor there about these starting islands. The people who complained, I've played MMOs almost longer than I played the Elder Scrolls games. My first MMO was Ultima Online. That was years ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm used to the MMO kind of point of view. I understand the starting islands, the tutorial. Normally I'm used to them kind of wrapped together. But I didn't feel that kind of crazy or hemmed in any way. But, the complaint of being hemmed in is not going to go away. Like, at least until you hit the 50 plus and 50 plus plus. Because I was trying to run through Stonefields the other day. I hit level 10. I didn't know how to get into Cyrodiil, and I just was running, and I hit the northern gate in Stonefalls, but it was blocked off by Covenant soldiers. I could not get through. The gates would not open because there were quest lines I had to do. So the feeling of exploration in the game, while it is really deep per zone, I think the removal of the starter islands really was superficial, to say the least, because you're still kind of hemmed in the long run. Did anyone else see this?
I think a lot of it is you have Elder Scrolls fans. Now think about it. Every Elder Scrolls game, I haven't played Daggerfall Arena, but let's say the most recent 3. How does it start off? You're a prisoner, you escape prison, you're in the middle of an open world. I think that's what they were trying to appease those people by doing this change. So, you're in Cold Harbor, you escape from Cold Harbor, and bam, you're in, in quotes, the open world of not just an island, but a huge zone. I think that's what it mainly was about.
If anybody who's playing this MMO is looking for the complete experience of a first-person game, of a single-player game like Skyrim, they're going to be completely disappointed, because they have to keep in mind that it is an MMO. You have to be hemmed in a way. But is it really wrong to hit a block of soldiers in the middle of a war if you haven't talked to 10 people to explain to you what's going on? To me, that seems almost natural. It doesn't really seem like it breaks anything. It makes sense.
It I like the way they did it. Like I said, going up to a fort that is supposed to be a gateway into the next zone, but it being occupied by soldiers is it's a neat way of blocking a player in without making them feel blocked in. not to the same extent. Now, like, I sprinted, I was trying to do the, clever use of game mechanics to get by the soldiers to advance to the next zone. And I couldn't open the door. But from a storyline point of view, what a lot of single player Elder Scrolls fans will enjoy is there is a barrier that's not really man-made or game-made. It's story.
It's not an invisible wall. It's actually literally like something blocking you off to not let you go in there.
Exactly. And that feels good. And I understand the removal. And you know what? I'm going to say this right now. Thank you, ZeniMax, for making these changes. Are a lot of the negative reviews, and I know, Crabby, you and I talked at length about a lot of these negative reviews and how we really just kind of felt that a lot of them were unfair. But did not this change really affect a lot of the negative feelings, or like a lot of the negative reviews that came out were pretty much, put a nail in the coffin with these changes. Oh, this doesn't feel like an open Elder Scrolls game. I'm hacked into a starter island which feels slow, or the combat's floaty. The two major changes here get rid of a lot of those major concerns from the negative reviews and what a lot of players have been saying. So, I mean, thank you, ZeniMax. They seem to really listen to their fan base. While I, as an MMO player, may not quite understand the reasoning for it, because I didn't think it was necessary, but some of the fans really thought it was. So as long as they can tie the story in and make me want to go back and help these people without making it feel disjointed for me, I'm fine with it.
It's nice to see a big company do changes like this to an MMO 27 days before early access.
Oh yeah, that's kind of unheard of, really. It's like we're getting close to launch here, and they're like, oh, by the way, the new thing, you're going to have this, this, and this. I'm like, oh. You guys haven't even started, like, that mad rush. For anyone who's played an MMO, they know that last, 2 weeks is nothing but, what is the proper term? I'm just drawing a blank on it now. It's where optimization of the game client, where they condense the game client down, where they start doing the graphics enhancements and getting compatibility with all the graphics drivers and everything. That is done at that very last bit. Those 2 weeks before launch are the hectic time where those poor devs never get any sleep. But to add something this big, like you said, 20-some days before early access, they still have to factor in the optimization process as well before this. The server optimization, that's always the last part before launch, and they haven't even done that yet. So that it is crazy. These devs are working hard on this game to try to push these things in so people like their game. I mean, even all the haters out there, if you look at it objectively, they are working their butts off to try to make this a game that even the haters will like. All the complaints that they're talking about, they're attempting to fix. That's an awesome game company. It really is. So, okay. Anyone else have anything to say about these starter islands? And then we'll move on to the next bullet point. Crabby, you have anything else to say?
Oh no, I think I've said all I can think of.
Face?
Yes, I've said everything I need to about this. Yeah.
All right. Now we're gonna move on to the next couple of points. This one's my favorite. PvE NPC collision detection has been added for NPC enemies and friendly characters, but no player collision for player characters, so none in PvP. This is awesome. I think this is one of the things that will take or add to the combat and make it feel not so flighty. Crabby, what do you think?
Oh, I think it's great. My favorite example of this was actually the Fourth Strategy Gaming video, where he demonstrated it by showing himself. I think he was surrounded by spiders, and he was like, I can't dodge away. I can't walk through them. They're literally surrounding me, and they killed him. You know,
I
it's
did
like
see that.
that makes sense to me. It just makes sense. I mean, I think it's great. I've never played. Actually, the funny thing is, let me think about it. The only game that had player collision in recent memory was, did Guild Wars 2 have it?
I don't think so, no.
Terra, maybe? I think.
Terra might have.
Yeah.
Do you know if
I
Terra
actually,
had player collision? I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
I mean, I'm sorry, it's really random. I'm just trying to think of the most recent game I played that had. I mean, Ultima Online had it, but that was 2D top down. But still, I
Yeah.
think this will definitely add to the immersion of the combat feeling solid.
If I ever get surrounded by spiders and I can't move, I think I'll be screaming and in tears balled under my desk, and Ag will have to save me. Although I think it's a great idea. It really makes you feel trapped and fighting for your life. And in first person view, I will probably be terrified and frantic and try and use all my skills at once to make sure I can get away. Which, when you're trying to be in this type of immersion, oh, it's fantastic. I was really sad that I wasn't able to experience it this beta because I wanted to try it out. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Although it will probably annoy me when Ag pulls my mobs away from me and then I'm trying to like fight them and run into them, and yeah, I think it's a good idea though.
Don't worry. That was just me playing around with the Dragon Knight. I'm gonna play Templar, so I'm gonna be able to use my javelin and knock them away from you rather than pull them towards me.
Oh yeah, because that's so much less annoying. No, it's not. No.
I'm gonna.
Isn't Adric Spear so awesome?
I love Atrix. I put a lot of points into Magicka just so I could throw it like 100 times.
So unless I'm a mage, I'm never gonna get to hit the mob. I guess I'm going with mage. There solves that problem.
Hey, Sorcerer is really fun.
Yeah, we just had this discussion of while we were playing the beta. She started playing the Nightblade, and she was having a lot of fun with it. And she's like, "Oh, great! Now I don't know if I want to play Nightblade or Sorcerer come launch." I'm like, "Oh, wonderful." Before it was just what race you wanted to play because you had no clue what you wanted to do. You're like, "I like this one, but I like this one, I like this one." That's now she also has to add on top of not knowing what race she really wants to play. She has to figure out what class too.
Oh,
So while
boy.
I'm in Cold Harbor for the first couple hours, she'll still be trying to figure out what she wants to make.
Banging my head against the desk in frustration because I can't get it. Although I think I might really just go with the sorcerer, especially if you're going to be pulling my mobs away and pushing them away, because I can't deal with that. As I'm going the swing, I hear you giggling, tee, and then you just toss them across the room. No.
I really did. I'm like, hey, why don't you go attack that? She runs up, attack that. I go, tee, come here, and Dragon pulled it over. Like, hee, look, it's over here now. I really did do that, guys. No lie. I had more fun pulling the mob, watching her run towards it, and I just pull it backwards, and she's like, well, great.
And in first person view, it just looks like the mob disappears. So I'm standing there going with, my axes out, like, where did the mob go? Looking around, and Ag is like 10 feet behind me, killing the giant bee by himself, giggling.
Indeed. I giggle, and I'm proud of it. All right. I do want to make a quote that was done on the Elitist Jerks forums during one of their Q&A for PvP from Brian Wheeler. And this is a verbatim quote. Having worked on games with player collision in PvP before, we found that it was far more valuable to offer players larger battles with better server and client performance than smaller battles with player collision due to the hit servers and clients take when implementing such a feature. That's not to say we didn't consider it at one time, and while it's always interesting to put collision in a PvP game, when you're dealing with the masses of players, it becomes more of a frustration point than a tactical advantage. Speaking from personal experience, trying to set up a shield wall behind a keep door than watching players find ways through it. End quote. I am kind of upset that they don't have it in PvP. I understand, but the idea of forming a human wall of bodies with your Zerg to prevent people from running through a hole in a keep wall, I thought was awesome. I'm sad that they didn't add it. I understand from client point of view, but I think it would have been cool.
I don't. I'm glad they didn't do it because PvP already frustrates the crap out of me. So if I'm trying to run somewhere and I'm completely blocked and I can't kill this player, can't go anywhere, I think at that point I would just need a new TV or possibly a new husband because I would just be beating things because I'm so upset. PvP is just, it should not be that frustrating. Not allowing this to be in PvP really does take away a lot of the frustration that you would get from being blocked in like that. I think it was a smart choice, not counting the client and server point of view, just from a player point of view.
What do you think, Crabby?
I've always I've not been a hardcore PvP player, but I've always enjoyed it, and I'm leaning more towards in favor of them not putting this in PvP, because the reason this is not going to be in PvP is they do say, it's performance issues, blah, blah, blah. But I think player griefing is way more of an issue than anything. All it takes is a couple of people to block a doorway, and, you're like one of your friends blocking a doorway. You can't run through it because they won't get out of the way. It's like, that's what I see when I see player collision in PvP. I just, like trolling, just flashes in front of my face.
Same.
I don't see the tactical advantage of shield walls. So it's awesome. That is awesome ideas, but I feel like they're ideas, and they would happen less than people griefing would happen.
See, this is also why I don't think they only said NPC collision in PvE, because I can tell you what, in Warcraft there wasn't player collision, but who's seen the big Tauren on their mammoth on top of a mailbox so you couldn't see it and click on it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that kind of griefing I understand, and I know that's why they're not doing PvE player collision. You will not be able to run into, you cannot run into me, Thais. You'll run right through me. I cannot stand in front of a door and block you from being able to click on it. Because, yeah, that would be. You could... Some people would legitly just, not a big deal. But there would be. There would be the griefers, the guild of, whatever... Jerk Guild 1 would all line up in front of a keep door in a solid, hand-holding line, and no one would be able to log into it, or get into it. Or surrounding a... bunch of hippies out there surrounding a quest giver in a hand-holding circle because they wanted to cut down trees, Yeah.
I mean, even let's say let's say me and you were on the same faction, and our friends are trying to run up the keep stairs to fight somebody. Say me and you decide to be trolls, and we just stand in the middle of the stairs and they can't get by.
Yeah.
I see that happening more than anything. That's what I see.
Yeah, there is definitely, as I said to my wife a few days ago, man, the best thing, MMOs would be so much better if there weren't people in them. You know what I mean? Because it really is. I'm sorry to say this, guys, and for you single player people, I'm sorry you're gonna have to experience it, but you'll start to see the dark parts of humanity come out in MMOs. It happens. Not everyone, but there are those people who can't be jerks in real life decide to do it in game, and player collision probably would bring those people out. I could see people doing that, just forming a circle around an important quest giver and never logging out, just to just to be those kind of people. But I can see. All right. The next 2 bullet points we'll add in here, which will actually come into this point. They updated the combat animations for when enemies and players get hit, as well as updates to camera shaking for all heavy and light attacks. Attack animations have been improved to make them feel more fluid and natural. That is awesome for bringing that floaty combat down. Those big complaints that I hear about people, or that people say, the combat is just not good for X reason, X reason, X reason. They are really working hard to make those changes, to make it feel heavy and impactful. I know in Skyrim, for instance, when I swung a two-handed sword, when I did a power attack and I did a charge, I was committed. My character moved forward. I couldn't stop myself. If the guy like sidestepped and I was going off a cliff, I was going. I couldn't stop myself. There was momentum. And when you hit that person, you had that player collision that it felt heavy. It felt like you hit someone. So I'm loving these changes. Anyone else on combat floatiness?
I just want to add in here that if you hear any squeaking or anything, it's because Ag's Khajiit is currently trying to climb all over him. So he keeps picking her up and putting her on the floor. And she does it again, picking her up and putting her on the floor. I'm sitting here and it's actually really funny to watch. But back to the combat. In watching the video, I didn't know if they had added them into the video. I was able to see the shakes from the heavy and light attacks, and I'm excited to see this from a first-person point of view, since that's always how I play. And if I do decide to go with the Nightblade, it will be really interesting to see how that interacts with my dagger swings and my different skills. So that's pretty neat. But I did not see them in the video that I watched. I did not see a difference in the combat animations. So I'm really curious as to how drastic the changes were, because I couldn't see it. And I think, as I've said before, my biggest issue is about how the characters run and the characters jump. So I don't know. I didn't see a difference. Did either of you?
You know, I was going to say, first off, Penelo, my little Khajiit, she's insane. And evidently she does not understand the definition of, what is it? Definition of insanity is attempting to do the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, because she really is jumping up on my lap, I put her down. Jumps up my lap, I put her down. You are insane. Mwah! As for that video we were watching, I think it kind of hurt the fact that he was using a staff the entire time. He wasn't doing melee. I think that probably would have helped to see some of the combat animations, especially for melee, because I don't think anyone complained about range, because range is exactly what you expect. It's range.
From my understanding, something else I thought I saw somewhere is the actual animation they changed. I think they did it so when you swing, it actually feels like you'll actually get a little bit of resistance when you hit what you're swinging at, and it won't just go clean through, you know? I think that's what they might have done. And because he's not using his staff, you're not going to see that. So, because he is using his staff, you're not going to see that. Yeah. So that video might not have been the best to showcase it. But then again, the changes might be so subtle that if you've been playing on the PTS for the past year, you might notice it right off the bat. But people like us who've only been in the beta weekends, we might not really notice it. So.
Got a very good point there. But it really is. It's those subtle changes that you can feel. We were talking just before the show, we were talking about one of my pet peeves, and it was the fact that I felt I was running too fast. That is a very subtle thing between there and like Skyrim and stuff of that nature, and Morrowind and Oblivion, but I felt like my character was running too fast. It might also be part of the sound, like I you hear footsteps, but maybe it wasn't as heavy. But a slight change there, like I said, just 25% movement reduction would be, I could feel that a lot. Most people wouldn't notice as much, maybe they would, but that little thing, which some people probably didn't even notice, I noticed because it was a small little change, something that annoyed me, but it was a minute thing.
Do you play in third person or first person?
I kind of do both. I
See, I feel like by playing in third person, you kind of get the illusion that you might be running faster than you are. Because whenever I play Skyrim, whenever I zoom out, I feel like I'm going faster in third person than in first person. But that, I mean, that could just be me, but that's, I don't know. It
Maybe.
might be a weird perception I feel like I get.
I could definitely see that. There is that little bit of where you're looking matters. And
Mhm.
it just feels like I run by things very, very quickly, and my Khajiit is now standing on my chest in front of my face. Um, when I'm first person, I feel like things are whipping by my screen, out of my line of sight. That's what I feel. So some people didn't even notice, but like you said, adding just that little bit of resistance might be enough for us to go, yeah, this makes it feel heavier. It makes it feel like I'm not just swinging in air. So, definitely. Anyone else on player collision and combat animations before we move on? No? Okay. All right. The next part of this is monster difficulty has been increased starting at level 5. Um, I'll be honest. The solo experience, and again from the MMO perspective, it was kind of easy. What about Face? Did you feel the solo gameplay was easy?
Once I started adding skills and upgrading them and morphing my abilities, oh yeah, 2 hits and something was dead. With that, I can't think of the name of it. With the one Nightblade ability where I attack it and it drains their health, it doesn't matter how much damage I took. If I hit them with that, I was at full health and they were half dead. It was really easy, especially with us running together. So this makes me really happy. I want to start taking more damage again and it be, life threatening. And then adding the collision into it. Oh yeah, it's gonna make it a much harder experience, and that in itself is fantastic.
Crabby, what did you feel about it? Did you feel the solo experience was too easy?
Yeah, I honestly, I thought it was fairly easy. Even playing as a sorcerer, just like two shot, two, three shotting pretty much everything on the initial islands. And even in I was in Daggerfall, and even there, it was kind of like I would start to lose health when I had like 3 monsters on me, and I was level like 7. So I'm really glad that they're increasing the difficulty because I think it's definitely needed.
I agree. There was a marked difference in difficulty. I was either murdering everything or I would hit something that was so hard that there was no, it would murder me. Like there was 5% of its health and I was already dead, or it was so easy it never got to me. There was extremes. It was either insanely difficult or insanely easy. Um, Most notably was like the Dark Anchor stuff, especially later on when I was trying to solo things that was a little difficult. But yeah, that makes me happy. Going on to the next sections, which are kind of neat, and we'll talk about these too. They introduced dark fissures. These are smaller versions of the dark anchors where several Daedra will appear and need to be defeated. These are designed to be a solo experience. The dark anchors had their difficulty increased to have more Daedra, and the boss at the end has been beefed up to ensure this remains a group experience and not soloable unless you overlevel it. This is part of that section up above where they're making things more difficult. Have you guys? I know Thais hasn't seen a dark anchor, but I have. Crabby, have you run across a dark anchor?
I have seen them, but I haven't actually completed one or attempted to complete one.
Oh, well, actually, in this most recent beta, I completed one for the first time, which was actually really neat. But we'll go more into that a little later. But yeah, even with those, if you have enough players, I didn't feel like, especially in this current beta, that they were all that difficult. The hardest thing to do was understanding the mechanics of the fight, which were simple mechanics, but like after certain Daedra were dead, you had to go click like on a lever and that would allow you to move to the next stage. And I noticed there was, for a couple minutes, people weren't really paying attention. They were just slaughtering Daedra, and the switch was active and no one was hitting it. So I think once people learn the basic mechanics of these, I think they'll probably be pretty easy. So I really would like to see them made more difficult so that it does take a group of players who are coordinated to do it. I don't want these things to be Zergfest. As for the Dark Fissures, again, designed to be solo experience, I think they're kind of neat, just to add a little bit more randomness to the world. I would like these to be random, because the Dark Anchors have specific locations in the world where they spawn. They're either active or they're not active. Crabby, you'll know from the old DOAC days, the champion spawns, that's kind of what these are. They're either active or they're not active.
Ultima Online?
Yes, Ultima Online.
Yeah.
Yeah, the champion spawns.
Yeah, those were fun.
Yeah, they definitely were. But there's no, in Rift, for instance, they weren't random. There were fixed locations, but there were 50 fixed locations across the map, and they would spawn. From what I've noticed, there's only 2 or 3 per zone that I've seen. And they're fixed locations. So when they're active, I definitely encourage people to go up and do them, because it's a lot of experience for them. I didn't notice any other rewards when I downed one. Now I'm hoping these fissures are random. Do the rift thing.
I have a tidbit of information on the Dark Fissures.
Oh.
I was watching a few Tamriel Foundry live streams this weekend, and most of those guys are in the public test server or the private test server, which is it's a build ahead of the weekend beta, so they have access to all of this stuff we're talking about. From what they said with the Dark Fissures, they said there was a ton of spawn locations. They weren't random, but it was like Rift, where they would spawn in specific spots, but there was a ton of locations. So they said it would be a lot like Rifts, where, one would always spawn right there, but it might not spawn there for a few hours, but one might spawn over there, it's random.
Right. Well, anyone who's worked in computers or math knows there's no such thing as random. Even the random number generator has fixed digits it needs to have. So yeah, when it has 50 spawns, it gives the illusion of randomness, but not necessarily. It's not 100% random. You can't create code that's 100% random. There always has to be an if, and, or but in the sentence structure. Going, if it's not here, it's here. Yeah, you could do the same one 100 times in a row, but the likelihood of this is astronomical. And if I started breaking down the map, I have a feeling poor Thais would shatter.
Please don't. I beg you. Please don't.
Crying over in the corner about math. Yeah. So yeah, this is cool. Definitely the spawn locations that aren't if you have a lot of them, so it makes it feel random when you're in a zone. It's like, oh, I haven't seen it up here on this hill ever, but maybe someone else saw it 3 weeks ago there. Whatever the case may be, that's definitely cool. Instead of just having the 3 very solid, champion spawn locations that they're either active or they're not. So I think it's definitely a nice change, and I hope, like what we were talking about, I think in episode 1 or 2, talking about how people can make these worthwhile. I would love to still see them add rewards to Dark Anchors and Dark Fissures that are unique and sought after, such as crafting materials, or I don't know, make it a super rare, a horse from, like that undead horse. Make it the undead horse, I don't know, just something that people want to go back and farm this stuff so that zones don't feel dead after the initial wave of levelers are through. Make it so people go back and do things.
Make it a unicorn. I like unicorns, and I would go back and defeat it just for a unicorn.
Okay, we're going to try to stay within the Elder Scrolls lore here, so I don't know if there were unicorns.
Well, it's still, fantasy and mythical. There could be unicorns, you don't know.
I will take a Dwemer Spiderling mount.
Actually, that would be okay. That would be okay with me. I'll take that instead.
Either that or I want a Dwemer sphere where he carries me like a baby, like I crawl into his arms and he rolls around. That's what I want. That would be cool.
I like that one too. Okay, can we have both those ideas?
I want to ride a chick in the beginning of the game, Lyrius Titanborn. She's pretty tall. On her shoulders. I mean, right on her shoulders.
Oh yes, shoulders.
That's what I meant.
Family friendly show here.
Yes.
I agree. She's pretty awesome. Yes. Anyway, moving on to the last topic here from the news, and they have increased the amount of items that can be interacted with in the world, such as barrels, boxes, crates, etc. So it brings us closer to single player test games in terms of environment interactivity. I love this. Dace, what do you feel about that?
This is definitely going to drive me crazy, but in a good way because I'm the person who will open everything and take everything. So if there's more things that I have to interact with, I'm not going to be able to run around nearly as much and explore as much as I want to because I'm just every bag, every barrel, every box, every glass, every farming node, I'm going to be picking it all up. I'm going to have to go back to town every 10 minutes just to sell stuff or unload stuff, and oh, I'm gonna love it. I'm sorry, Ag, if we never actually make it anywhere because I'm just opening everything.
I already told you I'm fine with this because we're gonna have to go in between quests because it was killing me to vendor the extra items that I got because I just wanted to break them down for crafting mats or to do research. And I know, like, if I get items that have research and I don't have, I'll throw them in my bank and hold them there. I'll wake up, like, set an alarm for every 6 hours to go and wake up and set a new research if I have to because that's how crazy I am about the crafting. Crabby, what did you think about the addition of all the extra fun interacted items?
I think it's great. I think the more things you can interact with in the game, the more it feels like an Elder Scrolls game. I mean, there's nothing at all could be negative from this. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I know one of the things that people were talking about, and it wasn't really a criticism, it was just a note in some of the earlier ones, was that some of the single player Elder Scrolls people may feel a little out of place at some things you couldn't interact with, you know? So adding more to kind of dilute that line a little bit definitely is a nice thing.
I wonder if they added because a lot of the items. Because let's see, if you interacted with a rice bag and you took some rice out, the bag would look like it tilted over a bit and some of the rice was missing. And when you opened a box, it would look like the lid was shifted and items were taken out. So when they added the increased amount of interactable items, did they also add in the look that you have interacted with it? And that to me is it's a subtle change, but I think it's an important change so that it looks like you've actually gotten something out of it. Because I think I even remember saying to you in Cold Harbor, "Oh, babe, look, I opened it and look, there's something missing. Like, wow, that's awesome." Or even in Skyrim when you went to the giants to steal their cheese.
Oh, are her anger from this last
That is
beta?
the grossest noise in the game, by the way. Next time you grab cheese from the giants in Skyrim, really listen to that noise. It's disgusting.
Oh yeah, like the loogie sound.
Yeah. Oh.
I remember her in this last beta. Oh, the anger from because she wanted to run around in Cold Harbor and collect some stuff. All the pots were open. She's like, I think they removed it. All these pots are open.
I was so upset. All I wanted was some lockpicks. I didn't want to stay very long. I just wanted lockpicks. And I think I ran around that entire area 6 times in a circle, and every single pot was open. There was nothing in it. All the vases were empty. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to leave. This is stupid. So I left Cold Harbor. And then as soon as Ag spawned into that room, every single pot was closed. Like, you've got to be kidding me? All I wanted was some lockpicks.
I may have even found a racial motif for Redguard. I mean, what?
I'm going for Brett when I was in Cold Harbor. Oh yeah, you know what though? Now this might make you a little upset, Aggelos, that another rumor from Reddit that I heard about the next patch. Something about every item you loot in Cold Harbor will sell for 0 gold. And
That's it. Game's gonna fail. I quit. Podcast is over.
And on top of that, your account can only loot everything in Cold Harbor once a day. I thought I heard that. Once again, it's one of those, patch, 0.18 rumors, but I don't know how true that is, but it's something that I thought was kind of interesting.
Game's gonna fail. Going free to play within a month.
It's done.
That's
it's over.
It's done.
Well, he had already realized that because I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, but he had this entire plan to gather up as many lockpicks as he could, and then as soon as he left Cold Harbor to sell them. But in one of the areas we went to, there was a merchant who just so happened to be selling lockpicks, and poor Ag was so upset when he saw this. He's like, "Oh, there goes my plan. I'm never gonna make any money. This girl is selling my lockpicks. What is this crap?"
I was very furious, and it makes me think that ZeniMax listens to the show because they heard me say that I was gonna do that. And I'm like, "Well, no, you're not." That's it. Done. Can't. Free to play. That's it. Done. Game's failing.
Over.
All because you can't sell your lockpicks to the poor people who did not have time to pick up their own. That is just evil.
That is that's like the U.S. system of economy here. That's supply and demand. I have, you want, you buy. Yeah. Anyway, I'm very upset about that. Well, I guess any fans of the show will be able to interact with me much sooner because I will be out of the starting zones after I loot everything and can't loot anymore. I'm sad. My day's crushed. Awesome. Anyone else have anything to say about any of our discussion topics before we move on?
No, I'm good. I think we covered them pretty well.
I'm fantastic.
All right. Well, now we're going to move on to my favorite part of the show, which is the actual, as what is the namesake of the show, the Tales of Tamriel, where we get to tell our stories from, and especially this week, the Elder Scrolls Online, because we were all in the beta. Who would like to go first? Anyone?
I will.
Good, because I had you marked first anyway. All right, go ahead. Tell us a little bit about what you were doing in ESO this week.
Okay, let me start this off by saying I'm not nearly as thorough as Ag is. My notes are kind of all over the place, and it's not really a set story. But the one thing that I want to mention the most, which I feel free to jump in whenever you want, because it was one of the most exciting things, was Izad's treasure chest hunt.
Is that the one Stros Mackay?
It is.
Yes.
I love that quest so much.
I had such a great time doing this because when you first open up the chest, it's just like tucked right there in the sand, and I will do my best not to give any spoilers, but do my best.
I'm gonna preface this, and she'll go on with the story, but this is one of the best quests that I've done in an MMO since the old days of MMOs. All I'm gonna say is, when you do this quest, you do not have a marker on your map. You have to read the quest, and it gives you clues, and the clues are vague. It's a riddle.
There's no information on Google either. It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As Ag and I were running around, we both have our journal up, and we're running around together, and we're reading the clues, and we're bouncing ideas back and forth off each other, and the one part you're standing on top of something. I'm gonna try not to give it away. And you're standing on top of something, and I'm sitting in my chair and I'm like pointing out in the distance. How about that? That looks like it makes sense with the next clue. And Ag's going, yeah, sure, let's go over there. So then I made the horrible idea to jump off of what we were on top of. And it was actually so high up that I felt nauseous when I hit the ground and inevitably died. So that was a lot of fun.
I will say this for the clues they give you. I'll give you the one in particular. It is vague. The first clue was to find Saintsport Star. That's all it said. To begin the quest and find the clues, you had to find the Star of Saintsport, or whatever the name of the town was. And that's it. There's no other clues. So you have to figure out what in creation is this Star of Saintsport. And that starts you off. And each one after that is even more it's vague. I think like when the next one was find the island of stone faces or iron faces. It's like
And it really was a journey going all around because it was a couple different clues. Each time you found it, it gave you a different clue and you had to keep going. So we walked around for a while trying to find this, and Ag eventually said to me, "Watch it wind up in the same place that you started," which I think would have been really funny. It wasn't, by the way. It wasn't.
wasn't far.
No, it wasn't far, but it wasn't right where it started. And a couple of them confused us. It took a minute for us to really figure out where it was. So if you're going to play in this zone, I really suggest you put the time into doing this treasure hunt because you won't be disappointed. I think out of all the things that I did this beta, it was the most enjoyable because the quest was just awesome and I love puzzles and
it's one of those that you really will do yourself a favor by not Googling it and trying to figure it out. Because when you get to those points and it updates your quest, you go, so that was the star. That's what the riddle was. It was really neat. I have not seen a quest like that since the old, the invention of Quest Helper in Warcraft, which pretty much killed questing as us old school MMOers know it. Because Crabby, you remember back in the day, like Ultima Online didn't really have a lot of quests, or if they were kind of hit or miss. Some of the earlier MMOs were this way, where when you got a quest, you read it in your journal. Morrowind players, oh my goodness, Morrowind players, you remember the quest journal. You had to flip through the pages to find the journal text for that specific quest. And it did not mark it on your map. It kind of was like, go down the road till you see the rock shaped like a pelican. And from there, turn left and walk 45 paces until you hit a lava. It was crazy. And if you got lost or turned around, you pretty much had to start over to try to figure out where you were at. So this quest, not having any markers on your map, was really cool.
before that point in my journey, something else that I thought was a lot of fun was we were helping pirates. I think they were pirates. And I really enjoyed doing this because we got to you had a choice. And I like and I dislike games that give me a choice because it's always really difficult for me to pick the right choice, and then I struggle with it, and then after I make the choice I somehow regret that I made that choice. Although this one I didn't. And it was a lot of fun because I got to poison the ship captain who was poisoning her crewmates for being bad, and I felt like it was justice. And while I was in my first person view and she was lying on the ground just writhing in pain, I was pointing and laughing because that's what you deserve, that you were poisoning your shipmates. And I just walked out of there, just let her die on the ground, and the person that I was helping was like, "Oh, I'm glad you decided to do that." Like, well, you're welcome. Later on, this goes back to Ag and his chain. We decided to attack some wolves.
It wasn't me.
We decided to attack some wolves on a hill, and there was a lot of wolves sitting there. Well, not at first. At first, it was just like 2 or 3 wolves, and they were kind of laying down under a tree. And I said, "All right, let's go attack, these wolves." So we run up to these wolves, and all of a sudden we're swarmed by 6 wolves. And every one I go to attack, Ag decides to chain it to him. And I'm trying up close, trying to use my skills, and every time I went to slash, there goes Ag pulling the wolf away. Like, all right, okay. So I go to slash another one. There goes Ag in his chain, as he's sitting in his chair mocking me by going, "Get over here." I was very frustrated. 6 wolves in, I wasn't able to hit any wolf, so finally I just sat under the tree and watched him die, 2 wolves eating his face. But
Totally worth it.
it was fun. It was definitely fun. There was another quest in the journey that kind of hit me as a female because I'm all about, love and chance and things like that. And there was this red guard who was really sad because someone that he cared for was taken away and we had to go find her. Now, of course, your first thought is, oh, it's going to be another, red guard. It makes the most sense. But when we finally rescue her, it's a dark elf. And when we get back to the camp after killing all these guys to save her, and we unhook her, and I tried not to read a lot of the quest text because it's beta. When the real thing comes out, that's when I want to immerse myself. But she mentioned his name, and when you get back to the camp where she is, and he's so happy to see her, and they're chatting, and it's a red guard and a dark elf, and it, as a woman, it made my heart go, "Oh, that's so sweet," overcoming the odds. Dark elves are not even part of that same alliance, and just oh.
Okay, just to counter her all, most dark elves were very promiscuous and often were worked in brothels, hence the one I visit all the time.
Yeah, well, this dark elf wasn't that way, okay? I could see it in her dark, malicious, red, bloodshot eyes. I could tell. As a woman, I can do that.
That was a skooma.
It probably was.
Awesome.
And then, another quest that we did on our adventure, which was really creepy, was we went to a graveyard, and we had to battle swarms of the undead. And normally in games, when you're battling the undead, they kind of just walk around like regular people. But these undead really moved like they were undead and riddled with, bugs in their skin, and their faces were torn apart. And I was able to just stand there for a minute and watch one walk across the graveyard, and he stumbled and just ew. And then Ag did his chain and brought it to me, so I kind of ran in the other direction. But battling the undead, that was a lot of fun, having to look at them be all creepy. They did a really good job making the undead.
I do like the character models from the Elder Scrolls in general, because if anyone's played Oblivion, the undeads, zombies in the crypts in the Iliad ruins were a lot the same way. They shambled, not quite as well as they did in this one. They did a good shamble on here. And I'm actually listening to World War Z, the audiobook I have on my Audible account. So I'm kind of in a zombie mood at the moment. So when I saw the zombie shambling, that just kind of got me all awesome at them. But
That's a good book.
It is a good book. It's fantastic. I encourage anyone who hasn't read it to, pick it up. It is fantastic. It really draws you in. Anyway, but yeah, the zombies, the shambling, and the way that they looked was fantastic. But they do have a dark era about them that the Elder Scrolls series has in general from even the older games. Because I know the zombies in Oblivion, when you saw them shamble towards you, they would be missing their bottom jaw. You could see their entrails hanging out. It's dark, and I really like these games because of that.
The last part of my story time, I'm going to get real girly on everybody here. During
Just when I said that the game was dark, you're gonna get girly? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, yes,
Oh.
it's gonna be pretty girly too. You know, any guys listening to this are kind of gonna maybe mute this part.
Okay, all guys, 1 hour, 18 minutes roughly into this. You can mute going forward. Okay, go ahead.
All right, let's see. While going through our journey, Ag and I stumbled upon an area that was absolutely beautiful. And I had to write it down because I said to myself, if it ever happens in game that they introduce any kind of marriage or when we get our rings of Mara, that we have to go to this spot in game because it's just so beautiful. It's a shaded waterfall surrounded by stone pillars and like miscellaneous ruins, and it's at the end of the river west of Karzog's demise. And it was just really a really pretty area, and I kind of stood on this one pillar and pointed to the waterfall and said to Ag, "This is where we have to get married in game," because I was just so excited. But that's the end of my journey throughout the ESO beta. Figured I'll end on a pretty note instead of the zombies.
Was it infested by zombies?
That would
Is that-
probably make Ag like it.
Well, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, so when we have our in-game wedding, we don't have groomsmen. We have zombie bashers who stand in a circle and keep the zombies at bay during the ceremony. That's what the ushers do. They have a real job. Instead of seating people, they bash zombie heads.
I think I need to find a new spot now since there's gonna be zombies there. That's not cool. That makes it less pretty. Gosh, guys.
Well, not if you have good ushers to keep them away.
That's what every woman wants at their in-game wedding: bloodshed and zombies and spiked clubs. That's like the
I don't see a
dream
problem with
day.
That sounds like a perfect wedding to me.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with it either.
Oh man, that's a wedding I'd actually want to go to. All right, Crabby, do you want to tell us a little bit about your beta experiences and tell us a little bit of a story?
I got a couple of short stories. Let's see. So I tend to make a new character almost every beta, just because I want to try out different stuff. I mean, I'm a horrible beta tester. I'll admit that. I tend to like to try stuff out rather than actually test. But anyway. So now I don't know if either of you watch Twitch TV streams, but when you watch Twitch streams, there's about a 30-second delay between people talking in chat and the streamer actually responding to them. So this person I was watching streaming, this kid Mendable, I was playing with him, and me and him were on that second starter island after Stros Mackay. No. Yes.
It's the orc that Beneki or whatever.
Yeah. All right, it was the Orc Island. Yeah. So me and him, we're running around. We come across a bugged quest, and you have to like summon something out of a crypt. It's like a ghost, but it's broken. There's 100 other people standing around, and
Yeah.
I said to him in game, I was like, "Well, why don't we just go north to Karzog's demise or whatever and see what's up there?" So we head up there, and we're just killing stuff and.
Close to our wedding spot.
Yeah, right around there actually. And we finally decide, well, there's nothing over here, so maybe we'll just head back down to this. He says, let's go back down to the sea, see if we can somehow take a boat somewhere else, because we had no idea. So he heads south, and I'm watching his stream as I'm playing with him, and there's a delay, so I'm seeing real time opposed to the stream. So he starts running down, and there's like a big tower type building in the middle of this like orc stronghold, and I'm watching it, and he's far ahead of me. I had to go AFK for a minute. He's far ahead of me, and he's running into the stronghold, and I'm watching the stream. He runs out, and I catch up to him. I'm right behind him. I see him jump out a window. I follow right behind him, and then on the stream I hear him go, "Crabby, wait, no, don't!" And I was like, "What?" And I died. I was like, he jumped out of the highest window on this keep, and I followed him right away because the stream delay did not catch up. So I was just like, oh my god, because I didn't have any soul cards left, so I couldn't res right there. So I had the res it away shrine. But that was just a funny story of how I just killed myself by following somebody.
That's one thing I like about this game. Like when you jump, um, you get that vertigo feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Let me think. What else? Oh, I mean, I have a level 10 character, another sorcerer, and I was running around in Cyrodiil a lot. The PvP, the PvP in this game is weirdly good. Like being in a group, like being in a group of like 10 people and killing a group of like 30 is very strange. I don't understand it, but it works and it's awesome.
Well, you noticed when the PvE NDA lifted for press how a lot of the reviews were negative. And I think in our one episode we were talking about this, how when the PvP one was lifted, how it went from negative to positive. Even people like Angry Joe, who was like, oh, this game is terrible for PvE, was like, I'm actually considering getting this now because the PvP was a lot of fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun. Like setting up siege equipment and being able to place it wherever you want and just like launch anything at keep walls. Just awesome. It's just satisfying. I love it.
Yeah, the nice thing about the siege, which I'll add on to your story with that, is they other games, Dark Age of Camelot for one, had siege points. You had to play siege at these points. I believe Guild Wars 2 was very similar, with certain devices where it had to be on this point here. You could only put oil here, here, here. This one doesn't have that. You can place it anywhere you want, but each keep has a limit to the amount of siege you can have. So per side, so each side can set up 20 siege engines at a keep. So there's like an invisible circle around the keep that keeps track of how many siege engines are available, and you can only place that number. I think that's a neat thing.
Yeah. Oh, I just remembered something else that happened. So, excuse me. On my second sorcerer, I was now me and that kid who were streaming. He ended for the night, so I logged off. I logged in the next day, yesterday, and I eventually got past that bug quest. I got on Daggerfall, and I didn't want to do any more of the main story because I want to save it for when the game comes out. So I figure I'll just run around Daggerfall for a while, exploring and whatever. And never in my I've been playing MMO since I've been 12 years old. Never in my life has an MMO actually made me jump in like a shock scare type thing until I hear that wow, and it sounds like the world is ending. The second I heard it, it scared the crap out of me. Then, I mean, immediately I realized it was a dark anchor, but it scared the crap out of me, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I just ran up to it, and I think it might have been bugged out because I didn't see anything coming out of it. But yeah, that legitimately scared me initially. I was very surprised. The sounds for dark anchors are awesome.
They really are, and the way they place them is you'll be going along, you'll be hearing your music, you'll be doing your thing, and the atmosphere changes. All of a sudden, you hear those horns playing, those real dark, ominous, like heralding horns of doom, as this dark anchor comes from the sky. Oh, it is definitely very cool,
Yeah.
especially when you're close by and it happens.
Yeah, I had my headphones on. The volume was up kind of loud. I was just vegging out playing. It might have been like 10:30 at night, and it just like it just scared me. I jumped. I was like, "Oh my god, what the hell is going on?" But that's awesome. A game that can do that is awesome.
I agree. Definitely, it's that immersion feeling that really gets you going, and I really like that with this game, especially with the inclusion of first person in this game. When you really zoom in, if you play in first person, it makes you feel like you're there.
Yeah. Speaking of first person, God, I hope they had a field of view slider really bad. I
Well,
really hope they do.
if enough people actually mention it on the beta forums, I'm probably sure they probably will, because I've heard that suggestion before about a field of view slider. So
Yeah, it's a little bit too. It feels like it's around like 65% zoomed in, a little bit too low for my liking.
I guess they would have to do a limit though of whether or not they want you to, what their idea of immersion is versus your idea of viewing. Because if people had the choice of one playing first person, they'd have like 180. So it's one
Well,
and half, even though that's not
yeah,
realistic.
that's true.
Well, who knows what they'll do. All right. Do you have any other parts of your story?
Nope, just jumped out a window, killed myself, and got terrified of a dark anchor. That's about it.
That's awesome, and I'm telling you, I've done that too. We mentioned earlier in the podcast, especially when you do it in first person, when you jump from high, you get that like it's weird, but when a game can portray to you that you are jumping from high, where you feel like the butterflies in your stomach, that is really cool. I enjoy that every time. I was telling Thais about this, and I said this game is probably the second best game to portray that to me. The only game that ever did it better was Assassin's Creed. Like those games, when I was playing those, that gave me some serious vertigo feelings when you're
Oh,
up.
especially when you're jumping into the hay piles and stuff too. And it zooms in, that all that stuff.
Absolutely, that was fantastic. All right, well, I guess I'll move on to my story time. Similar to Crabby, I do the same thing. I'm addicted to their character creation, so I recreate characters. Um, but I actually played two characters this beta. I had my Nord Templar, who I had from the past two betas, I think, actually. Um, I got him to level 10 finally, because I always am exploring and taking my time rather than rushing through quests. And the main reason why I wanted to get him to level 10 was for Cyrodiil, and I'll move on to that in a few moments. But one of the things, as I was talking about earlier, is the sense of the world in this game and how they make you not feel penned in even though you are. I wanted to know how to get into Cyrodiil. So I'm kind of, I'll say this as my criticism for the game. I get it. It makes logical sense. But from the player that I am, I'm kind of upset that the game has you spawn into a campaign, you say, okay, I want to go to Cyrodiil, and it ports you there. I was kind of hoping there were like border keeps in like Morrowind and Skyrim that, were keeps into a pass into Cyrodiil. I hope there still are. I hope they add them just for aesthetic reasons. I would love it. But it took me a little while to figure that out. So I decided, okay, well, I'm in Stonefields, and this area is kind of up to level 10, so maybe the entrance to Cyrodiil is in the next zone. So I'm hiking my way north, following the roads the best that I can, because as I'm getting further and further to the north, the levels of the monsters are increasing. Now, the one thing about this game that I love is, while there are leveled monsters in the leveled zone, the levels are close enough that it doesn't make you feel like you're running into a brick wall, similar to like some of the early Warcraft, where when you were in the one zone in like Tristful Glades, it was level 1 to like 5, 1 to 10. But when you got up near the northern part, there was a dungeon up there, all the mobs were level 30 or higher. So it was out of place for the zone that you were in. This game doesn't really do that. All the mobs are in their level range, but the level ranges are smaller. Instead of being like from 1 to 10, it's from 2 to 6 or 7 to 10 or something like that. The monsters are still very difficult. Once you pass a certain level, they're hard. Like 1 or 2 levels above you, it's a good fight. But so by the time I'm moving up there, they're starting to get up to level 12. I can handle them one-on-one okay, but if I get more than Two I could probably handle. Three tends to get a little rough depending what kind of type of monster they are. If they're a caster or if they're, whatever their special attacks are that I have to deal with. I'm sneaking my way through. I'm using the crouch and sneak feature to try to get by all these guards, and I get up to the northern section of Stone Falls, and there is a keep, which is supposed to be the mile gate to get into the next zone, and it's blocked by Daggerfall Covenant guards. There are guards all the way through it. And this is the part I was talking about. There was a quest that you have to liberate that keep before you can go through. Found that out. That was interesting. And I think that's a neat way of being hemmed into a certain area while still not feeling it. Like, that seems like a logical way of being hemmed in. So, I'm stuck here in Stonefields. I finally ask in chat, going, how does one get to Cyrodiil? Because I never asked and I never really looked before, and I finally was up there. Someone told me that, oh, well, you have to go into your Alliance War menu, you select your campaign, and then you can go into it. So I did. Went into Cyrodiil, and oh my goodness, Cyrodiil is huge. I heard it was big. Like, I really did. I heard it was big. I didn't think it would be that big. Crabby, you were in Cyrodiil. Did you get that feeling of just massive scale?
I knew about a year ago they said they were using the height map from Oblivion for the Cyrodiil map, but I really didn't think it was going to be as big as it was. Like, it's almost the same exact size. Like, it's probably not the same exact size, but it's damn close. And I was very surprised to see a zone that big for PvP. It was awesome.
It really was. And that's not even all of Cyrodiil. They cut parts of it off. They have it, and for balance sake, I understand why they did. They did a triangle shape around the Imperial city. So you're missing part of the Clovian field section where Anvil and stuff is. That part's not accessible. That may come in later. Maybe not for PvP, maybe for something else. Don't know. And the Nibene Bay region, that section is not used. It's just that center triangle there. And it is really, really, really big. I decided I was going to step out on foot because there's no teleporting in the thing unless you use what's called a transit network. Or Transis, there's these little teleport stones that when you click on them, as long as there's a link between the keeps, you can select a keep and port to it. That link breaks when someone is attacking that keep or takes certain amount of the field or the mine. After they've taken enough of it, that link breaks. So then people have to run on foot. I ran from the North Morrowind mile gate, and I tried running to the first keep. I kid you not, I showed you on the map, I was running for about 15-20 minutes, and I was only about 30% across the map. It was insane how big it was. I actually saw some negative comments in the chat about how big it was to get into the fight, but you know what? I like it. And I think it's for the health of the PvP in that game, I think it's a necessity. It makes people really think about what they're doing. They're going to have to break up the Zergs more, because if a Zerg gets wiped out and takes 15 minutes to get back to a keep, that is going to be detrimental. They're going to lose that keep. They will. There's no way around it. They're going to get wiped out and they're going to lose that keep, which is awesome. I love it. It's fantastic. And it really did. It felt like Cyrodiil. If I had to say a complaint about the Cyrodiil as it was, and I understand it's a PvP zone, I didn't notice that many NPC mobs in there other than guards. I did notice a couple. There were a few packs of mobs of monsters running around. I found a den of wolves. I found a wisp mother who really almost killed me. It was actually really bad. I had to run from her. but there seems to be a lack of mobs in the zone. I would like them to fill that out a little more to give a sense of PvE objectives in there. And I know there are, but in the short time that I was in there, I didn't really see much of any. As for exploration, there are some hidden things. One of the things I found, which I thought was really cool and had served no purpose that I know of, I found an ancient Iliad ruin. I cannot pronounce the name. It was a very long name. There was no entrance and it was half submerged by water, but I noticed there was a pillar standing on a central plateau kind of section. So I ran over there. I don't even know what I was looking for. I decided to run over there, and you could interact with the pillar, and it spoke to you. Apparently, he told a story. It was an ancient Iliad sculptor had a grudge against this other Iliad elf and actually cast his soul and trapped it inside the statue to mock him. So this guy's soul has been trapped inside this statue for millennia. He goes on to say how this century, or not centuries, it was millennia, thousands of years ago, this was a pleasure city for the aliens. And he goes on to talk about it. And the thing that I love about the game is it's dark. He goes on saying, yes, above ground it was a beautiful garden. There were trees and flowers that was pleasure to both the eyes and the nose. When you went underground, there were saunas and torture chambers so that we could amuse ourselves with torturing the lesser races, such as yourself, showing the dark nature of the aliens. As we, in episode 1 and 2, when we talked about Alessia and the aliens, how they would torture the human, the Nedic population in the area, that's what they did. They liked to torture and maim things. That's what they liked to do. And that was part of their pleasure city, was there were torture rooms where they could catch the lesser species, humans and other species of animals, and they tortured them for pleasure. And he goes on and talk about it, and then you could talk to him going, can I help you? And he's like, well, I can see you possess neither the wit nor the skill to free me from this, but if you happen to find someone on your travels, send them my way. And then you can say yes or no. And I said yes. I want to see what he said. And he goes, you don't even lie very well. I've already been here for thousands of years. What's another couple thousand? And that's how the story went. And I left. But it was neat that they added that. And this was actually close to the Imperial City. I wanted to see the Imperial City from a distance. I know I couldn't get to it. Because when you walk up, you see there's these giant Daedric, they almost look like dragons or demon things on the bridges that were going over into the Imperial City. And you can see Daedric anchors, like almost all the bridges are broken because the Molag Bal dark anchors have ripped the bridges apart and are pulling them into Cold Harbor. You can see them being pulled up into the sky. It is really neat. But as I'm exploring around this area, it was really out of the way. There wasn't even a road that connected to this Iliad ruin. And it's just kind of funny that they would take the time. I don't know, there might be a quest applied to it, but when I got there, it was just some dialogue. I love that about Elder Scrolls games, that they add this kind of stuff for seemingly no one. How many other people found this I mean, people will probably find the ruins, but how many people are going to talk to the statue if there's not a quest involved to it? And I sat down and had a conversation with the statue just because I thought it was awesome. I think I spent the next 45 minutes walking along the bay, trying to find a way so I could see the Imperial City, and it was early morning in game world, so I could see. There was heavy fog. I really couldn't see very well, but I could see a giant dark anchor directly above the White Gold Tower, trying to pull it into Cold Harbor. It was really neat. As I got down closer to the water, I found out that there are indeed slaughterfish in the water. You cannot swim out that far. They will eat you alive. and I saw like Imperial ships in the water being sunk. There were Imperial soldiers, NPCs that you could attack around the outskirts of the city on the banks. You could find camps of them, and I attacked several camps of them just because. And it was awesome. I probably spent like 2 or 3 hours in Cyrodiil, not really participating with the war, just walking around this area because it's so big. It is just massive. I really cannot wait to go into PvP, and I plan on vying for emperorship. Never really liked PvP much, but it reminds me so much of my beloved Dark Age of Camelot that I'm probably going to be in there pretty often. So it's pretty neat how they score for emperor. They shaking your head over. No. Well, when she's off doing something else, that's where I'm going to be. You'll see me in Cyrodiil. The neat thing how they score for Emperor is they do have a leaderboard showing the different leaders in the PvP scores. But if I'm correct, I may be wrong on this, but the leaderboard changed. You have to be in Cyrodiil to be counted on the top 10 for Emperor. So even if you have like 30 billion points, if you're not logged in, you will not gain Emperorship if you take all 6 keeps surrounding the Imperial City. So I think that's really cool. It's a way for some of us who don't live in PvP to really get a chance at being Emperor. So, all right, I'll move off of him because after being in Cyrodiil for a little bit, I actually left that character because this is one I've been playing for several betas, and I made a Breton Dragon Knight to play with Thais, and I'm just going to piggyback off her story for a little bit because we adventured together the entire time. And this was actually my first time playing a Dragon Knight to an extent. And they have some pretty neat abilities. I do like that chain, if for no greater reason than just taunting Thais with the chain pull. But we started a Breton. Oh.
So you heard that, right? He does it on purpose, just to annoy me. Just figured I would point that out.
For the record, I am going to make a Templar, and I will always have Piercing Javelin on my bar to do the same thing. I won't pull them to me, but I will knock them farther away. So, for the record, I will still be annoying her in live. So, love you, baby. Anyway, the main things that we wanted to talk about was definitely that the treasure, which was an amazing quest, and we already hit on that one. But that I hope they have more of those types of quests going forward in this game. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else really about that you didn't already cover. I really want to get to Daggerfall on one of these betas because I want to see that zone to see how it looks. Because I'm still not sure what alliance we want to play. I'm definitely going to be a Nord, and not really sure what my beautiful wife wants to play because she doesn't even know anymore.
I'm really torn between a Dark Elf, a Breton, and a Nord. And I went through and I made test characters for each one. And the Breton, which just had the look and the hairstyle, even like the body, the different the different adornments that you could do. It's just, for Breton, it seemed to work for me. So if we play in the alliance that has the Nords, I might just make my Breton over there and be a sorcerer so I can hit everything that he pulls close or tosses away.
Yeah, no, I'm not really tied to Ebonheart in either way, especially now that we have the Explorers pack, but I'm a Nord. I've been a Nord since Morrowind. I can tell you I am not a Skyrim fanboy. I don't play Nords just because of Skyrim. I played them since Morrowind. My very first character was a Nord. I like the Nords. I love their lore, being the children of the sky. They are my race. Those are the ones that I just love. So I'll be a Nord no matter what faction we decide to play in. Unless we have a lot of friends that come up soon, which I doubt, because funny story, when you get those little beta key things, I know I gave away my beta keys just to random people on Twitter because it's like, oh, bring your friend, and I'm sitting there going, okay.
I don't have any friends.
I don't have any friends. Way to make me feel bad, ZeniMax. Like I said, the most people I could think about were my wife, who already was in beta, Crabby, who was in beta. I'm like, my one buddy who couldn't do it because he's working. I'm like, well, there expends, most of my friends. My one buddy who's at work, who was on episode 2 with us, Warren, he's in beta. So I'm like, well, I don't have any more friends. As sad as that sounds, I'm like, great.
It's okay. You're my friend.
You're my friend too.
Oh, Jesus.
I know it was like, oh, goody. Oh, great. Really made me feel bad, ZeniMax. Thanks a lot. Anyway, going on with that. Yeah, so I gave those away to some listeners who said they didn't have it yet. So I had one and I gave that away. So I hope they enjoyed beta. But I think that was about it for my beta experiences. I could have swore there was something I wanted to touch on, but it was really Cyrodiil was the big thing I really wanted to talk about because I'll be frank, I was wowed. I don't get that feeling much in most MMOs and games that I play anymore because, I've been playing so many and I've been playing for so long. But I really was. I frankly was. I was wowed by the size of Cyrodiil. And I'm really looking forward to PvP in this game. And I don't look forward to PvP in many games. I like them to be in my games so that I have that distraction, but I don't normally play in them very often. But I think that is going to end our story time for this episode. It is time for us to move on to Thais's favorite part of the show. It is time for her dramatic reading of a book from the Elder Scrolls series. Keeping with the theme we had last week, when we had her read A Tragedy in Black, I decided to keep that storybook theme and picked another book that she'll have to read in that old-time, story book fashion. This week, we have chosen Night Falls on Sentinel, a book in which an assassin tells of how he removed the Crown Prince of Sentinel. Now I present Thais as she reads A Night Falls on Sentinel.
No music played in the nameless tavern in Sentinel, and indeed there was very little sound except for discreet, cautious murmurs of conversation, the soft pad of the barmaid's feet on stone, and the delicate slurping of the regular patrons, tongues lapping at their flagons, eyes focused on nothing at all. If anyone were less otherwise occupied, the sight of the young Redguard woman in a fine black velvet cape might have aroused surprise, even suspicion. As it were, the strange figure, out of place in an underground cellar so modest it had no sign, blended into the shadows. "Are you Jomek?" The stout, middle-aged man, with a face older than his years, looked up and nodded. He returned to his drink. The young woman took the seat next to him. "My name is Habala," she said, and pulled out a small bag of gold, placing it next to his mug. "Sure it be," snarled Jomek, and met her eyes again. "Who do you want dead?" She did not turn away, but merely asked, "Is it safe to talk here?" "No one cares about nobody else's problems but their own here. You could take off your cuirass and dance bare-breasted on the table, and no one even spit," the man smiled. "So who do you want dead?" "No one, actually," said Habala. "The truth is, I only want someone removed for a while. Not harmed, you understand, and that's why I need a professional. You come highly recommended." "Who you been talking to?" asked Jomek dully, returning to his drink. "A friend of a friend of a friend of a friend." "One of them friends don't know what he's talking about," grumbled the man. "I don't do that anymore." Habala quietly took out another purse of gold, and then another, placing them at the man's elbow. He looked at her for a moment, and then poured the gold out and began counting. As he did, he asked, "Who do you want removed?" "Just a moment," said Habala, shaking her head. Before we talk details, I want to know that you're a professional, and you won't harm this person very much, and that you'll be discreet. You want discreet? The man paused in his counting. All right, I'll tell you about an old job of mine. It's been, by archay, I can hardly believe it, more 'n 20 years, and no one but me's alive who had anything to do with the job. This is back afore the time of the War of Bethany. Remember that? I was just a baby. Course you was. Jomick smiled. Everyone knows that King Lotun had an older brother, Grethlick, what died, right? And then he's got his older sister, Ubki, what married that king fella in Daggerfall. But the truth's that he had 2 elder brothers. Really? Habala's eyes glistened with interest. No lie, he chuckled. Weedy feeble fella called Arthago, the king and queen's firstborn. Anyhow, this prince was heir to the throne, which his parents wasn't too thrilled about. And then the queen just squeezed out 2 more princes who looked a lot more fit. That's when me and my boys got hired on, to make it look like the first prince just got took off by the underking or some story. I had no idea, the young woman whispered. Of course you didn't. That's the point. Jomick shook his head. Discretion, like you said. We bagged the boy, dropped him off deep in an old ruin, and that was that. No fuss, just a couple of fellas, a bag, and a club. That's what I'm interested in, Habala said. Technique. My friend who needs to be taken away is weak also, like this prince. What was the club for? It's a tool. So many things what was better in the past ain't around no more, just 'cause people today prefer ease of use to what works right. Let me explain. There's 71 prime pain centers in an average fella's body. Elves and Khajiiti, being so sensitive and all, got 3 and 4 more respectively. Argonians and Slodes, almost as many as 52 and 67. Jomick used his short, stubby finger to point out each region on Habala's body. 6 on your forehead, 2 on your brow, 2 on your nose, 7 in your throat, 10 on your chest, 9 in your abdomen, 3 on each arm, 12 in your groin, 4 in your favored leg, 5 in the other. That's 63, replied Habala. No, it's not, growled Jomick. Yes, it is, the young lady cried back, indignant that her mathematical skills were being questioned. 6 plus 2 plus 2 plus 7 plus 10 plus 9 plus 3 for one arm, and 3 for the other, plus 12 plus 4 plus 5. 63. I must have left some out, shrugged Jomick. The important thing is that to become skilled with a staff or club, you've got to be a master of these pain centers. Done right, a light tap could kill or knock out without so much as a bruise. Fascinating, smiled Habala. And no one ever found out? Why would they? The boy's parents, the king and queen, they're both dead now. The other children always thought their brother got carried off by the underking. That's what everyone thinks. And all my partners are dead. Of natural causes? Ain't nothing natural that ever happens in the bay. You know that. One fella got sucked up by one of them Selenu. Another died of that same plague that took the queen and Prince Greclith. Another fella got himself beat up to death by a burglar. Gotta keep low, out of sight, like me if you want to stay alive. Jomick finished counting the coins. You must want this fella out of the way bad. Who is it? It's better if I show you, said Habala, standing up. Without a look back, she strode out of the nameless tavern. Jomick drained his beer and went out. The night was cool, with an unrestrained wind surging off the water of the Iliac Bay, sending leaves flying like whirling shards. Habala stepped out of the alleyway next to the tavern and gestured to him. As he approached her, the breeze blew open her cape, revealing the armor beneath and the crest of the King of Sentinel. The fat man stepped back to flee, but she was too fast. In a blur he found himself in the alley on his back, the woman's knee pressed firmly against his throat. The king has spent years since he took the throne looking for you and your collaborators, Jomick. His instructions to me what to do when I found you were not specific. But you've given me an idea. From her belt, Habala removed a small, sturdy cudgel. A drunk stumbling out of the bar heard a whimpered moan accompanied by a soft whisper coming from the darkness of the alley. Let's keep better count this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And that was Night Falls on Sentinel. That was a pretty cool story. I've actually never read it in its entirety.
I really like the New York accent that Joe Mick has. That was pretty good. It's pretty good.
I was trying to not over-exaggerate a guy's voice, and I have no idea where it came from.
You know, that brings an idea to me. One of these times, if I pick a book that has multiple characters, I think we might just have to act it out. Maybe I'll do a guy's voice next time, and I'll have her do the female if there's multiple parts.
I really need to ask for opinions from the community. How well I do a male's voice. Everyone listening to this, how well do you think I do a man's voice? Because from my perspective while reading it, it doesn't seem all that bad. And I've never been to New York, so where the New York thing came from, I have not a clue.
You can definitely tell when you're doing a man's voice compared to a woman's voice. It just, I'm just making fun because it just sounded funny. You sounded like you were doing a New York voice.
I was trying to portray gruff and tumbled and kind of that he didn't care. So I guess maybe that, really worked for that voice.
Subliminally, she went mobster because he was a hitman, so I think that's where she was going with that.
This guy's in Goodfellas right here. It's pretty sweet.
That's so awesome. Wow. So now whenever I do a man's voice, I can just portray a mobster. That works for me.
Perfect.
I didn't know there were mobsters in Sentinel, but apparently there are. There's a seedy underbelly going on.
There really is, yeah. Yeah, there is. All those lies and everything. Well, wouldn't that what he would actually be anyway? The very start of the mobster world.
Yeah, I can't argue with it. I loved it. It was fantastic. I'm going to have to definitely look for more of these storybooks. I like them a lot. They're really cool. I mean, I love the lore, but when she does those the readings, it really did. It really drug me into the story as I was listening. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, I like them. They're good.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to the next part, which is our community spotlight. This week, I've chosen to spotlight TESOCast by Twonkhammer. These guys are another community podcast focused on the Elder Scrolls Online, as well as they have several other podcasts featuring other games, but I'm not going to mention those because this is an Elder Scrolls Online podcast. Sorry guys, I'm only going to feature TESOCast. Anyway, I love these guys. In my opinion, their style of podcasting is unique in the ESO community. I really don't see a lot of white knighting or fanboyism coming from these guys, as they're a group of hardcore MMO players from what I gather, with a special focus on PvP, who knows what it takes for an MMO to thrive, and they want to see ESO meet those demands and become the new MMO superstar. I think they're a great listen, and the antics between Rode, aka the Naked Nord, and Asari of Tamriel Foundry are hilarious. And Alistair and Ryan, they're always there to keep the two of them in line, or at least try to. I think Ryan kind of falls in there from time to time as well with the other two. I actually think they're all part of the same guild as well, called Legion Gaming. They're a multi-gaming community. I think the name of the ESO wing is a Vulcandine. I'm sorry, guys, if I pronounced it terribly wrong, but that's their guild that will be representing, I believe, Ebonheart Pact in ESO. If you're looking for an MMO-centric viewed podcast with a focus on PvP, I would highly recommend TESOCast. Great group of guys that are a blast to listen to. I love them. I hope to see these guys in game, since I know they'll be playing Ebonheart Pact. Hopefully I see Rode coming at me, though, because who wants a Naked Nord coming up behind you? That can only end badly. Anyway, thanks guys for being an amazing part of the Elder Scrolls Online community, and keep being awesome. Going on to our next section, we have our emails and shout outs. We had several 5-star reviews on iTunes. from, actually one of these is from Warren before he got brought onto the show, was he just listened to the pilot episode, and I can say that I will definitely be following this podcast throughout the Elder Scrolls Online development. We had a 5-star from iCambelik C. I'm sorry, I don't know how you would pronounce that in any form of English, but looking forward to more from you guys. Love the Elder Scrolls. I have one from my favorite Dirty Bosmer, Drew Money. One thing is obvious when you listen to this podcast. Tales of Tamriel's hosts are excited to talk about ESO as they are to play it. The emotion here is contagious and makes for an enjoyable way to pass the time. I really appreciate the time put into this podcast and would like to thank Thais and Aggelos for their honest, often differing opinions and the ability to make the time between ESO weekends pass quicker. Talos, bless you, my friends. Drew, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I've spoken to him on Twitter several times. Awesome guy, even if he does play a Dirty Bosmer. I'm pretty sure you didn't worship Talos, but you know what? We'll let it pass for now because you gave us 5 stars. Anyway, we had a actual comment on episode 5 on our talesoftamriel.com from Zarad Gorak. I'm sorry, I'm sure that's a work name, but you know, we're just going to call you Zarad for now. Another great episode. I stumbled upon you guys when I was searching for ESO podcasts to listen to at work, and I think I started listening right from the very first one you put up. Anyway, I have a quick question. Apologies if this is in the wrong place. FYI, it wasn't fantastic. In relation to the points you made in the last couple of podcasts about the way the game seems to have been received by MMO news sites out there. Thus far, I've only had access to the beta test to form my own opinions, or I haven't had access, sorry, to form my own opinions, but I've listened to the podcast put out there by a fairly massive MMO news website. I don't want to give them the satisfaction of advertising, but hopefully you were able to detect my hint. In the last few episodes, these guys have completely written off ESO in its entirety. Their articles and reviews/previews of the game also have been less than stellar, and one of the more recent ESO articles actually misquotes an ESO dev about the subscription model and seems to fall into the scaremongering category. I want to know when said MMO news sites uses quotes like, if the game didn't have Elder Scrolls in its name, I don't think we'd even be covering it. Is there anything about the game that you could see would invoke this negative reactions it's been getting? I've obviously formed my own opinions this weekend, but so far ESO seems extremely polarizing between fan sites that obviously love it and everyone else who hates it. Keep up the good work, and hopefully I'll be seeing you both in Tamriel. That was from Zarad on our website, and I actually interacted with him a little bit on the website, going back and forth, talking about this. And I wanted to open this up to you guys as well. Crabby, you and I have been talking several times about this, and the site that he's talking about, I'm sure, is massively. I've written these guys off because there was a quote, and I linked the quote if anyone's interested in reading the full thing, because I'm not going to go into that. But I have linked a post from the personal blog of the editor-in-chief of Massively.com from 2012, right around when the game was announced, who essentially was doing nothing more than bashing the developers, not the game, because of their entitlement that they felt it was not fair that ZeniMax was showing favor to, I forget the name of the site, and not them, and didn't give them previews. They were all high and mighty about, oh, well, we have way more readers than PC Gamer or this, and this. We're more about the MMO. They should come to us kind of feeling. There was a big sense of entitlement from her personal rant on her blog about how ESO was treating them unfairly, that they should have the rights of previews before other sites. And I'm going to be frank with you guys, and I said this, the reason why it seems like their site has almost constantly written off ESO, I think it's a personal grudge, especially from the editor-in-chief. The way that they sound, I think they're more mad at the company that they did not get the early preview rights than what than the game actually being bad. Like you said, all the articles are negative for they don't give good reasons. Zara, did you see that? Or not Zara, I mean Crabby, sorry. Did you see that post I put on the site?
I'm sorry, which one was that? Oh,
It was what was it? Sky something or another. I don't know.
is that the one about the personal blog for
Yes.
that? I've read that blog myself. It's one of those things where you can think that massively wrote off ESO. I'm not trying to sound like, I know people, but I do know a couple of writers for Massively. I'm not going to get into details, but there are reasons why certain games have gotten cut down a bit. And from what they have told me, it is not because of a bias towards the game. It is, I don't want to say anymore, but it's something that affects other things. It's not because they hate particular games, but something has happened at Massively where they have to cut back on a few things. That's as much as I'll go into as detail with why Massively might have a few less ESO articles or less frequently. I can tell you that they're still going to be coming, just not every week. That it might seem like they're writing it off, but from what I've been told, they're not. It's an issue they're having with other stuff. But I've read Massively for years, and I like to think I'm a fanboy of ESO. I'll admit that, and I try to be as realistic as I can be. But when I go into that review, and the first sentence is the reviewer saying, "I hate Elder Scrolls games," I mean, I immediately go, well, what the hell?
Oh yeah.
Like I understand you want people who do not like certain things to like the MMO because the MMO is a very different game. But when you have somebody reviewing a game that now it would be one thing if he said, I never played Elder Scrolls games, I've had mixed emotions on them. But for somebody to say that they deeply do not like Elder Scrolls games to test the Elder Scrolls MMO, it rubs me the wrong way. I see why they did it because they want somebody outside of the fanboy to try it, but I still don't like it.
Well, ESO it's the Elder Scrolls is a franchise that I'm gonna say it plays differently than any other RPG. Period. Like even the single players, they play differently. There's an air about them that's different. That if you don't like the single player games, not saying you never gave them a try, but if you outright hate it, you're probably gonna hate ESO because they tried to bring that in. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I really didn't like that article. Just, I mean, who wants to read anything negative about a game they love? Nobody does. So I was like, all right, whatever. And I have a hideous problem of reading comments in Massively because the comments are a cesspit. Let's be realistic here. The Massively commenters it's bad. But
I've seen some of it. It's I don't even know why they allow comments on their page.
Yeah. Now, I mean, that Massively article, that wasn't really the final straw for me to stop reading Massively, but later on in the week, the person who had reviewed Elder Scrolls Online had some interesting Twitter comments that I'm not going to repeat, and I don't have any links to them. But his Twitter comments were very, very I don't care about ESO type things before he even reviewed it. And that kind of just made me go, I don't even want to read this website anymore. It just, I'm not liking what I'm reading. I'm not feeling good about it. So I'm done. I'm just done. I'm reading this website. It was a little too biased for me, I guess. I mean, it's hard to write off an entire website for the opinions of one person, but there's just too much going on from a negative point of view that I just didn't like.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I have two things to say. I'm going to just put this out there. Until recently, I have never heard of you Massively. And I don't care what you say. Two, any article that starts off with "I hate every Elder Scrolls game," I will not read, because you are obviously not even giving it a chance. If you can't say I have tried it and I hate it, but you just start off with "I hate every single one," then you are not worth my time to read, because you are not giving it a chance, and therefore whatever you say is not worth my time.
I don't. He didn't. He didn't. I mean, he didn't use the word hate, but he used the. I'm terrible with English. Well, like like very advanced words. But he used a specific. He used a certain word that I think it basically meant the word hate, but it was literally like I think the first or second sentence, and it was just like, ugh, whatever.
That's one of those things where if you're starting even from one of these things, like, hey, I don't really care for first person shooters, and I don't really care for, like, well, let's say if I was offered to review, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto. That type of game does not interest me. It would already start off as a biased opinion because I don't care for those kind of games. They should not have you writing about it unless you can be, unbiased on these things, are to be very, very centered when you're giving your review.
Mm-hmm.
Give facts as to why you don't like it. And like I said, from that personal blog, right off the bat, I'm not saying this at all because, like Crabby said, he knows there's some different things. But in my opinion, from me, this is Aggelos only speaking. So if anyone has faults with this, you can yell at me. I think it's unprofessional of especially an editor-in-chief of a large company on their personal blog to bash that they didn't have access to some. Yeah, I can say I should have or I shouldn't have, but it seems after that event, everything they've released is negative. And let's face it, the editor-in-chief decides what goes out. Would she let something go out? Especially if she has a personal vendetta against the company, to allow a good article to go out? I would like to say as a company they would not, but massively, they're a fan website. They're not, I'm sure they don't have tons of, they're not a Fortune 500 company. They still have a lot of say on what goes out based on the editors. They don't have, I doubt they have stockholders and shareholders who are angry when, positive reviews don't come out. They started as a fan site. And I can't say against everyone because I know there's some. I've spoken to people from Massively for other games such as Guild Wars 2. One instance, Richie Procopio, I think writes for Massively, and he writes almost for all Guild Wars 2 related stuff. Fantastic writer, and often he approaches. He's a fan, but he approaches from an analytical point of view, going, "This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like." If they would go from that point of view, that's great. Another article which I remember seeing on Massively was someone saying how bad the game felt, how slow it was, and then at the end of the article they're like, "Oh yeah, but I didn't get above level 5," and I slammed my head against the keyboard. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I wanted to, like, if I limit you in Warcraft, which is a proven MMO, which no one can deny was a fantastic game. It had millions and millions of subscribers. If I limited you to only the first 5 levels, you'd be bored too. And even it's just sentences like that where they're like, "Yeah, I only played for 30 minutes." I'm like, in an MMO, you can't even learn all the systems in 30 minutes. It just.
I'm guilty of arguing with people in Twitch streams this past weekend about ESO, and one of them actually said to me, "Well, I mean, if the game's not good in the first 5 levels, then the game's gonna be terrible." I was like, "I want you to go play the first 5 levels of Warcraft and tell me how awesome it is." And he immediately said, "The first 5 levels of Warcraft were great," and I was just like, "Now you're just totally talking out of your rear end." I mean, that like,
Troll into troll.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's uneducated, and like they didn't give reasons, not good reasons of going, "Oh, this is bad." Like there were some comments about other articles going, "This is what I liked, this is what I didn't like." What we were talking about earlier, the starter islands felt too restrictive and the combat was floaty. Well, those were constructive criticism offered to ZeniMax. Look what they're doing. They're changing it. So, on this title, we're not gonna. We'll just cut it off here because That we kind of answered the question for that. But the big thing I can say to people is give it a shot. If you don't like it, it's not for you. But give it a shot. That's what these beta weekends. I mean, I'm not a fan of beta weekends being for testing, but it seems like for this game, or not testing, but for just playing it to play it, because they're beta weekends. But it seems like they really need to. People need to try it, because you can pretty much, if you're over the age of 18, you can get a beta key. They're not doing an open beta, but they pretty much said, as long as you're over 18, you'll get a key. I mean, I gave away one. I know people who gave away a bunch. Elder Scrolls Off the Record gave away tons on their last episode. Different fan sites were giving away thousands of beta keys. There were opportunities for people to get beta keys. Try it out and try it for yourself. I mean, I was a raider in Warcraft. I loved it. I had other people who said, I cannot stand raiding. I don't want to do it at all. Were they wrong? No. Was I right? No. It's just what I enjoyed and what they didn't. You have to play it for yourself and see if you like it. But I'm going to say, if you didn't like Elder Scrolls games, you're probably not going to like this, because they play a lot similar. They still have MMO mechanics, so you may enjoy it, and I do encourage you to give it a shot. But, like that one article, oh, I hate Elder Scrolls games, essentially. Well, then you already went in on a negative foot and probably aren't going to like it. But, Zarad, thank you so much for your question. It was awesome. Gave us a little bit of a discussion. And, thank you for being part of our community. It was really awesome. And I want to thank everyone, Zarad, Drew Money, Icambelic, and Warren, for giving us all these reviews and questions on our site. It's really encouraging to see the community get involved. Well, it's my least favorite time, because it's time for our closing thoughts. Thais, why don't you go ahead and give us your closing thoughts for the show?
I got to talk about my experience in beta. So, it was an awesome show, and I got to showcase a male New Yorker accent. So, that in itself was pretty awesome. So, good show. Yeah, good show.
All right. Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Crabby, our new writer over at talesoftamriel.com. How did you like your first show? Tell us what you thought.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I really had a good time being here and talking with you guys. I've been listening since the first episode, and I was surprised. I was surprised how much I liked you guys. Because now I'll be honest. When I hear a couples podcast, I immediately go, but you guys are great to listen to, and I really enjoy it. So I'm very happy you asked me to come on and talk far too much, probably.
Awesome. Well, I just want to extend the invitation. Anytime you want to come back, you are more than welcome. We had a great time having you on the show. I love having more, like you said, couples. It's both of us, so we'll always be here doing the show. But as a community podcast, and this goes out to anyone who, if you have a good story and you want to be part of the Tales of Tamriel community, send me a message. I mean, we love guest hosts and stuff like that. And Crabby, you're always welcome. You're part of the Tales of Tamriel team now, as you're part of our writer and everything of that nature. Anytime you want, just let us know. All right. Thank you to my co-host for joining me this evening. It was fantastic. I had a blast. Really, those are my thoughts for the show. I loved having Crabby on. I love the story from Thais. Talking about beta is a blast. I adore the fan interaction I've gotten over the past couple weeks. Both Thais and I are excited every time we see a comment, every time we get an email or a Twitter response. It's fantastic. I love the Elder Scrolls community. I love you guys for wanting to interact with us and giving us good feedback and criticism on this project. It's every week I'm excited to do this show. And it's you guys out there, the fans and the people who interact with us. I've wanted to do this for a long time, but having so much positive from you guys, it just makes me want to keep going. it pumps me up when I see these things. So thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. Feel free to contact us with questions, comments, criticisms. Yeah, we need those on our website for the show, talesoftamriel.com. You can stop by there as well and read Crabby's first post, his first lore post. You can email the show at podcast@talesoftamriel.com. You can follow the show on Twitter at Tales of Tamriel or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tales of Tamriel podcast. Also, feel free to rate and subscribe to us via iTunes, Stitcher Radio, anything like that. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Tales of Tamriel. Good night, guys.